Hi, folks. Welcome back. By now, you've likely heard that last night during the White House Correspondents Dinner, a man armed with guns and knives stormed the lobby. The event was attended by President Trump, and the attacker reportedly charged toward the ballroom, leading to a chaotic encounter with Secret Service agents as guests dove under tables at the sound of shots being fired nearby. The president was not injured and was quickly rushed off the stage. The armed man, whom officials say was a guest at the Washington Hilton where the dinner was being held, was taken into custody and is expected to appear in court on Monday. Police believe he opened fire and acted alone, but they have not identified an intended target or provided a clear motive. All that being said, today we're going to be looking at the broader story around this, specifically why a lot of people are reacting with speculation, largely due to the timing and the recent nosedive in Trump's numbers, primarily as a result of this war in Iran. Because of that context, many people are receiving this information with skepticism. On the left, some are already calling this a psyop, with some pointing to statements Trump made after the shooting, claiming this was staged to justify building his ballroom at the White House. Now, before we get into all of that, let's start the timeline from the beginning by looking at a clip that has since gone viral, pulling nearly 13 million views as of the recording of this video, which shows Karoline Leavitt making what some are calling a prediction about what would happen later that night before anything ever even happened. Something that has, of course, raised a lot of questions among the more skeptical observers.
He is ready to rumble. I will tell you, this speech tonight will be classic Donald J. Trump. It'll be funny. It'll be entertaining. There will be some shots fired tonight in the room. So everyone should tune in. It's going to be really great. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
I love it all. And you wrote most of it, you said.
I can't take credit. In true Donald Trump fashion, the man puts his pen to the paper himself. So it's a lot of his own work.
Now, obviously, if you want to read into that, I would say you have plenty of source material. You know, she is saying shots fired. That is actually what transpired shortly after that. That said, it's not like shots fired isn't a common expression to use when you are literally addressing your critics. It's very, very common in this culture, this post-rap, hyper-performative, social media-driven culture. People say that all the time. I think it's actually kind of silly to just jump to the conclusion that this is indicative that she knew exactly what was going to happen later. She's very gleefully describing here how she thinks the president's speech is going to go. Shots fired, meaning rhetorical blows, not literal gunfire. So on that specific point, let's be serious. The phrase alone is not evidence of anything beyond tone and style. All that being said, there are other elements of this situation that raise more legitimate questions. And one of the more suspicious things that did happen is a phone call that played out in real time on Fox News before the shooting. And funny enough, it involves Karoline Leavitt, specifically her husband.
I want to just quickly tell you, I was sitting next to Karoline Leavitt, the press secretary's husband. He was one of our guests. He was seated right next to me. And, right as the dinner was starting, the national anthem happened. And then he kind of leaned over and said, I watched you on TV. You do a great job. You need to be very safe. And he was very serious when he said that to me.
Wow.
And he kind of looked around the room and he said, there are some.
Uh-oh.
Sounds like we lost Aisha's phone there. And this happens, by the way, especially when you have so many people attempting to utilize the same cell service at the same time.
Now, again, there is a ton of speculation over why her phone call cut at the exact moment where she appeared to be divulging some information that could potentially suggest there was prior awareness in the room that something might transpire, right? And funny enough, it ties back to Karoline Leavitt, who said what she said, as we just saw moments ago. Again, this is all speculative. The reality is that comment, you need to be very safe, could just as easily be interpreted in a completely general sense. We're talking about a high-profile political event with a president in attendance in a highly polarized media environment where threats, credible or not, are part of the background noise at all times. It is not unreasonable for someone in that context to say, hey, be careful tonight, especially in a room filled with media, politicians, and security concerns. And we won't ever know what she was about to say because the call cut off right there, mid-sentence, right as she said, there are some Whether that was deliberate or not on Fox News' part, it cut. There was a moment of silence, and now that gap is being filled in by the internet in real time with whatever narrative people already want to believe. You have to assume, at least from an analytical standpoint, that this is simply how things played out, because we do not have any additional information to confirm anything beyond that moment. Now, to be fair, and this is where people need to slow down a bit, Jake Tapper later took a FaceTime call from inside the ballroom, and he himself had difficulty maintaining a connection. He explicitly said live on CNN that the signal was poor and the connection was unstable. So it's not like this was some uniquely suspicious technical failure that only happened at that exact moment. Multiple reporters were clearly struggling to broadcast from inside the ballroom. Now, all that being said, Trump did share security footage of the attacker trying to make his way into the lobby of the hotel, and this is what it showed. You see a group of Secret Service agents standing around, kind of waiting, and then all of a sudden, the man just bolts right through. They draw their guns. Some of them end up joining in from other rooms, and then they converge onto the man. There's also footage of the aftermath showing the suspect lying face down in the lobby, surrounded by Secret Service agents. He has been identified as Cole Thomas Allen from Torrance, California. He's being described as a lone shooter, and there are already numerous conspiracy theories circulating online about him. This is a photo the president shared of Cole Thomas Allen, who, according to his LinkedIn, interned at NASA in 2014. And that same year, NASA published a paper that lists a Henry Martinez as an author. And why is that relevant? Well, because an ex-user named Henry Martinez made a single post on December 21st, 2023, and that post simply said, Cole Allen, the name of the suspect. And people are now using that to imply some sort of connection between NASA, this individual, and the suspect. On top of that, because the account uses Pepe the Frog as a profile picture, some are also claiming the user may be a groyper. Additionally, that same Pepe account has a header background image from a website literally called Time Machine, which references a study on quality of 3D digitization of tangible cultural heritage, whatever that's supposed to mean. Now, all that being said, the reaction inside the ballroom was somewhat like you would expect. There's also plenty of cell phone footage that shows journalists, correspondents, and public officials trying to figure out what's going on, hiding under tables. And Trump later held a briefing where he explained more of what happened and said the following.
And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, you know, it's not a particularly secure building. And I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before.
Now, that statement is causing a lot of people to immediately default to conspiracy theory brain and suggest this is all a psyop, that Trump wanted a reason to sell his ballroom to the American people. Now, I don't think that's a strong basis for conspiracy theory. Yeah, it's a little weird that he's talking about his ballroom in the middle of this situation, but the man is a marketer. This is what he does. He talks things up, he sells, and at a certain point, it is what it is. We know who the man is, and if you're surprised or dissatisfied by the constant pitching of projects, then you probably don't understand why so many people, including myself, voted for him in the first place. Now, obviously, there's a time and a place for everything. That said, I don't necessarily think it completely violates presidential decorum to mention the ballroom here, but it clearly gives bad faith people, especially bad faith people on the left, room and justification to make broader accusations that this was a psyop. I don't think that holds up, especially when you consider that people's lives were actually put in danger. There was a Secret Service agent who was shot in the chest His bulletproof vest thankfully stopped the bullet, but that alone makes it very hard for me to believe this would all be staged just to justify something like a ballroom. Now, if this were, in fact, as I'll get into in a minute, some kind of psyop, the more plausible motivation wouldn't be selling a ballroom. It would be distraction and the generation of public empathy in one direction. Now, all that said, there were also public displays of empathy on X alongside a lot of criticism centered around a video showing Erica Kirk leaving the ballroom in tears. That clip has drawn mixed reactions. A lot of people are saying they understand why she reacted that way, going to tears. After all, it's been less than a year since her husband was shot in the neck very publicly. So being at a high-profile event and hearing that shots are ringing out could absolutely trigger that kind of response. On the other side, you have people claiming she's being performative, saying this is classic Erica. Personally, I think it's far more understandable that she would feel the way she does here and that she would, in fact, be in tears, regardless of what you think of her. She lost her husband, the father of her children, less than a year ago. So a situation like this could understandably cause her to break down. That's not out of the ordinary. Whether it's performative or not, it's not really for me to judge, but I can see more reasons for her to cry than not cry. Now, one thing I do question is why she seems to be at every event and not with her children. That's something I'm actually genuinely curious about. She's now a single mother, yet appears to be traveling frequently instead of being with her children. Obviously, she's running the business after her husband passed, and she's taken on that responsibility. But at the same time, who is taking on the responsibility of raising her children? In my opinion, that's far more important than running the business. She could remain a silent partner, a shareholder, and still make a considerable amount of money without being the face of the business. But again, that's a broader discussion, and it's really not central to this moment, just the one area where I'd personally raise a question. All that being said, this situation was not free of bimbos because this lady went viral shortly after the shooting rang out because she was incapable of not being egregiously cringe.
How did somebody get a gun into the White House Correspondents Dinner? Honestly, as somebody who went, there was no security. You just showed your ticket and you were able to completely get in. There was just no pat downs, no metal detectors, nothing going on. So really horrible setup, and I just don't even understand how that was a thing when the United States president was going to speak, who has already had assassination attempts on his life. So really crazy.
Now, this bimbo, Deborah Lee, who's more widely known for her pro-Netanyahu, Israel-first messaging, also went viral for posting a photo of herself leaving the scene of the shooting. In the image, she's doing a duck face pose with a caption, "Shooter at White House Correspondents Dinner. Shooter is dead. Thank you, Secret Service." And the tone of that post, very polished, very performative, I say this ironically, comes across as what people would describe as Kardashian core. It's the kind of low-awareness, optics-blind post you'd expect from someone treating a serious situation like social media clout-worthy content. Now, beyond her tone, her actual claims in that post have been challenged. She said there were no metal detectors, but that was community noted. The note clarified that magnetometers were, in fact, used to screen guests entering the ballroom, and that the shooter approached the screening area and was stopped by security. There's even images that people are sharing in the replies that showed metal detectors in place. She doubled down, claiming they didn't make her go through screening and tried to shuffle her into the dinner. CNN journalist Alex Michelson also pushed back, saying, "Not true. Look at the video of the incident." To which she replied, "Don't need a video. I was there. Nobody checked me at all." Now, that's where this becomes an actual point of concern, because if what she's saying is actually true, then either she bypassed security protocols, which is a serious issue, or more concerning, she was allowed in without proper screening at an event where, like she mentioned, the President of the United States was set to speak. And that raises a much bigger question. How does someone enter a high security environment like that with zero checks, if that's truly what happened? And since we're on the topic of performative cloud chasers using this moment to get an inch on social media, there was also this video from inside the ballroom that went viral. And a lot of people are noticing that this person chose to just film their face the whole time, and how that truly amounts to being great coverage. Wow. Great coverage right there, huh? Oh, okay.
We were just seated over, I'm seated near one of the doors, and they're...
And what?
Zay!
What?
People are shouting USA now.
Oh, they're shouting USA, so there's no danger.
For huge knocks.
If people are
by the
shouting
store.
USA, there's no
Everyone.
danger, okay? If people are just standing around you, why are you still hiding?
I don't know, maybe it's safe now, but...
What are you doing, lady? I don't want to see your face. I want to see what's happening around. Okay, great. And it looks like the method acting classes have truly paid off. By the way, this situation was apparently so dangerous that Dana White, UFC president, who was sitting right up front, right next to Trump, and likely in the line of fire, something actually was going down, was caught on video along with several others, just sitting there, relatively nonchalant, while officers carrying what appeared to be AR-15s were scanning the area. Dana's looking around like, everything all right? Yeah, okay. And honestly, that's probably closer to how people should have reacted, and most people were reacting. It's a pretty reasonable response, especially considering that according to multiple reports, most people didn't even hear gunshots. They thought it sounded more like a train passing by.
It started getting noisy. Tables getting flipped over, guys running in with guns, and they were screaming, "Get down!" I didn't get down. It was fucking awesome. I literally took every minute of it in, and it was a pretty crazy, unique experience.
So you were on the aisle? What exactly did you see?
We were sitting right in front of the table.
Okay.
Right in front of where the president
Right in front of the table. Yes. And what exactly happened? So someone got tackled or like what?
Nobody got tackled, but guys came in looking for shooters. And they came toward our table. I thought the shooter was over by us or something. But, yeah.
So you didn't see the actual attack yourself? Okay.
Hell yeah, brother. And look, all that being said, there are serious questions about the shooter, about who Cole Thomas Allen is and what his motivations were. There is still no manifesto, nothing substantial released beyond fragments of his work history and that strange X account that appears to link back to someone who may have known him at some point. On top of that, people are speculating about who he may have been funded by. We're seeing claims that Iran was searching Cole Thomas Allen the morning of the incident, allegedly. Others are saying his name was Google searched in Israel 2 days before the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Some people are calling that a coincidence. Others are saying it's more than just a coincidence. Then you've got alleged images circulating of him wearing an IDF sweatshirt, claims that he made a $25 donation to Kamala Harris's presidential campaign through Act Blue, and oddly enough, that he was named Teacher of the Month in December 2024 at his school in Torrance. His home in Torrance has already been doxxed, and people are even connecting the number of his house to a QAnon post that supposedly references coordinated media attacks against Trump. Now, look, regardless of what the truth actually is here, and I'm always on the side of letting the investigation unfold before rushing to conclusions, letting evidence come forward, allowing for a prolonged examination rather than a rushed conclusion, I think what's very clear is that we're living in a moment where everything feels like the Zapruder film. Because the real story here isn't just the incident itself. It's how quickly both sides, left and right, default to narrative building over any kind of disciplined fact-finding. On the left, you immediately see people calling this a psyop, a staged event, a manufactured crisis, even going as far as saying this is some kind of MK Ultra operation, because it fits a broader distrust of Trump and the institutions around him. On the right, especially among more hardline MAGA loyalists, you get a similar reflex in the opposite direction. Instant dismissal, deflection, or absolute certainty that everything is exactly as presented with no room for scrutiny. Now, what you're watching in real time is not just a reaction to an incident. It's a stress test to a culture that no longer shares a baseline reality. Language itself has become a battleground. A phrase like shots fired, used by Karoline Leavitt, which in any normal context is clearly metaphorical, gets dragged into literal interpretation because the environment is so charged, so primed for suspicion that people no longer distinguish between rhetorical heat and physical events. A phone call live on Fox News, cutting out early, suddenly becomes evidence of a massive cover-up. Every gap in information becomes a vacuum that gets filled with whatever conclusion people already wanted to reach. And that's where the deeper issue lies. It's not just the facts. It's the way those facts are processed, distorted, and weaponized in real time. As we were talking about yesterday in the UFO video, there is a structural benefit for government, intentional or not, whenever there is an air of mystery around a situation, whenever there's any sort of obfuscation, whether that's purposeful or simply a byproduct of an ongoing investigation. It creates space for confusion. It keeps the public locked in an endless cycle of speculation, debate, and narrative warfare over things that ultimately don't improve their lives. And obviously, I'm not saying an attempted attack like this doesn't matter. It absolutely does. But the surrounding discourse escalates into a kind of fever pitch that we've seen play out over and over again. It dominates attention for days, maybe weeks, and yet rarely arrives at any clear or satisfying conclusion. There's always another layer, another angle, another what if. And the reality is, regardless of how you interpret any of these details, trust is gone. Institutional trust, media trust, political trust, it's all collapsed into this feedback loop of skepticism where every side assumes bad faith from the other. That's the real takeaway here. Not just what happened, but how we process what happens and how quickly that process breaks down into competing realities that never seem to be willing to reconcile. Anyway, folks, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.